Alright, go for it.
All right, so...
Yeah, Graham, hi.
Brian, hello. Thanks for having us here.
I'm your guest.
Well, so I actually wanted to start by asking you about this specific story because we reconnected after my episode taping with Tom Hanks,
Yes.
where Kelly Slater taped a question for him that involved you.
Yeah.
So I'd like your version of that story.
Okay, so my version of that story was, first, Tom and I had beach houses that were 100 feet apart, 2 in Malibu Colony, and in the middle was one other house, you know, that made it 100 feet. And we were just like really, really super good buddies, and we'd sit out on the beach, we'd do a bunch of stuff together, but we didn't surf. And we'd watch these young kids look pretty tough surfing, you know, kind of badass, like getting waves, because there was a surf break in front of both of our houses called Old Joe's. And one day, and we kind of shared birthdays, Tom and I. We're 3 days apart. So he decided for our birthday, he was going to buy us surfboards and get a surf instructor to teach us to surf, which is a big surprise. And I thought, great, let's try it. And we got the surf instructor. We learned at Malibu Beach, which is just on the other side of the colony. And we started to, you know, we learned how to surf. And then we started doing it. And we started loving it. And we loved it so much that we made a pact that even if we're working, unless he's acting on screen, if we're working, we'll stop working. I will cancel meetings, he'll cancel meetings, and we'll go surfing. So it was one of those days where there were good waves at a place called Little Doom Beach, Little Doom. And the waves were big, and it wasn't crowded, and I got on a wave. I have a short board, and he had a longer board, and I see Tom Hanks like in the impact zone while I'm taking off on this wave, and I'm thinking I could get around him. But I'm also thinking, he's a movie star. He's the movie star. Am I going to kill the movie star? And apparently I did, because I rode over him. And I conveniently forgot that it caused him to get, I think, 36 stitches in his calf. And I learned that on your show. It was 36.
Oh, do you remember what happened? Like
I remember
after
what happened, yeah.
So I mean, but you make impact, and then.
Well, I'm on the wave. I'm going down the face of the wave, and just really getting, gathering my stability to maneuver around the movie star, but miscalculated. Right. And hit the movie star.
And you had to take him to the hospital?
I literally block out bad stuff. So I'm not sure I took him, but I know we went.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so I want to take you back to when you were a young man just starting out in this career. You're, I think, 23 years old at the time. Tell about the job you had and how you were able to wrangle your way to consistently get in front of luminaries, and some of the notables you got in front of.
I became a law clerk at Warner Brothers. But basically what happened is I graduated college, very good college that I respect, and I'm also a professor at this college. USC. But at the time that I graduated, I asked myself this question that week. Did I learn anything? And I thought, I don't think I really learned anything except to how to cope better in larger populations. And then I thought, I'm going to need a job because I'm planning to go to law school right after this summer. And then very, very serendipitously, I overhear a conversation between 3 law school grads. And one of the guys said, yeah, I just quit the cushiest job of all time. And the guy said, where was it? He said, well, it was at Warner Brothers in the legal department. And I just quit. And so I lived in this little apartment, and I closed the drapes so that I could put my ear against the screen. And they said, yeah, it was at Warner Brothers. His name was Peter Connect that ran the department. He started with Jack Warner, and it was so easy. Company car, it was a breeze. And I'm thinking, great, I need all of those things. And so I immediately got the number of Warner Brothers, which was 843-6000, area code 818-343. And I asked for the legal department. You know, I think I was 22 actually at the time. And legal department, then I said, can I speak to Mr. Connect's office? They said, yes. I speak to his assistant. I said, I understand you need a law clerk, and I'm your person. Let me come in. So I came in, got the job that minute, that day, that minute, 3 o'clock. I had nothing to do for the first week. It is cushy, but also boring in this tiny little office. It wasn't even an office, it was a box. So I was working out of a box in the building. And the next following week, they said, oh, you're delivering these papers. I said, okay, and they handed me these documents this thick. So you're driving them to the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, and you're going to ask for Warren Beatty, who was at the time the biggest movie star in the world, also a director, a writer, he was everything, Warren Beatty. And I go to the Beverly Wilshire Hotel where he's living in the penthouse. Some guy comes down and says, hey, give me the papers. I said, I have to hand them to Mr. Beatty. They said, give me the papers. And so I said, no, I can't give them to you. They would be invalid if I hand them to you. They have to be handed to Mr. Beatty directly. So I have to do that or I have to take them back.
And you're completely full of shit.
Completely, I just made it up in that moment. And I didn't feel like I was hurting anybody. And so all of a sudden I'm standing in front of Warren Beatty on the top floor. And I hand it to him and I ask him some questions in the meantime, much like you do. And I was able to engage him, and he was very generous and spent an hour with me, just sitting and talking. And, you know, he sat in a chair, I sat on the couch, and it was beyond very enchanting. It was very information producing. So it was great stories, but it was the beginning of the demystification of how leverage worked in Hollywood, how things work, the dynamics. Because Hollywood is very foggy, very opaque world. And so I started to think it's not just parties, there's actually something beneath it. That's how it started. Then all of a sudden, I got to sit in front of Barbra Streisand's agent, who was the most powerful agent in the world, named Sue Mingers. And from that to William Peter Blatty, from that to big directors. And then I thought, I can expand this, and I can do this every day, even if I don't have a job to deliver papers. I'll say, hi, my name is Brian Grazer. I work in the legal department at Warner Brothers, and I want to meet your boss for the following reasons, and I do not want a job. And every person said yes, including Lew Wasserman, Jules Stein, the most powerful and talented directors. And that's what I did. And I told Mr. Connect that I would stay on for an extra year. And it was Lew Wasserman that really said something to me that changed my life. So Lew Wasserman was literally the most powerful person in Hollywood, or ever to be in Hollywood. So even more than the predecessors of the 5 studios like Louis B. Mayer, et cetera, or Jack Warner, because he became the patriarch. He spoke for the movie, for the entertainment business. He was everything. And I thought, if I can meet him, that would be like a grand slam home run meeting. That'd be like you getting me on the show.
There you go.
I'm joking. So in any event, I'm now up at the 15th floor to meet Mr. Lew Wasserman, and he's approaching me, and he's a tall man. He's a tall man, an imposing figure, an intimidating figure. And before I stick my hand out to shake, and he goes like that, puts his hands in the air, just hold on. And he had that ESP, he just knew this wasn't worth doing for him. So he said, just a minute. And he turned around, went right back into his office, without me, of course, I'm standing there, and came back with a legal tab, a big legal tab, paper, and the pencil. And he said, take those items, and when you put the pencil to the paper, it has greater value than it did as separate parts. Get out. And that meant, I was very insulting, ashamed by it, But then I realized he was saying you got to start writing. You have to own things. You have to own IP. And since he could tell I had no money, I had no connections, I had nothing, so I better make something. And making something was to write stories that were predominantly built out of my imagination, and 2 of them became television pilots and on the way to become series. And that was like my start.
Before you made it big,
Yeah.
what were creative ways you went about saving money?
Well, I made money even when I was young, because I always had odd jobs selling magazines, paper outs that Valley News and Green Sheet when I was 8 years old. It was a voluntary payment. That's why Tom Hanks said I was he's perfect producer. He's doing a free paper out and still getting money. I put a bunch of money in a metal strong box and buried it in north part of San Fernando Valley, where it was only just mountains. I dug a hole and put $6,000 in it, which was probably then like $25,000.
Wow. Why'd you?
I don't know. I just thought it would get stolen, or I didn't know what to do with it. I put it in a couple spots, and then I thought, no, I'm going to put it in a strong box. To that.
So you're trying to sell the movie Splash. You'd been trying to do so for years. Tell about what happens with the executive who told you, go away, lose my number, never call me again.
Oh, well, there's so many of those executives. I mean, it was almost unlimited. But the one you're referring to, she was the head of production at United Artists, and she loved me, and I love her. But at the time, she said, as you said, get out, lose my number, never come back. I came back. I mean, she said, and she used to tell people like around me, not to me, said, I tried to get rid of Brian Grazer. I'd throw him out the door, he'd come in the window. I'd throw him out the window, he'd come in through the chimney. He'd come in, threw him out the chimney, and he'd come in through the pipes and the plumbing. He was just, couldn't stop it. And I think I was even a little flattered, but eventually I kept coming in, but she never did the project. Never.
And you said when somebody says no to you, it has no relevance to your reality.
Relevance.
What do you mean?
It's just, someone says no to me, it's just a temporary point of view. That's it. And it's not personal. I take other stuff personally, but I don't take no personally. If I love something, what I'm loving is not the story, because the story are pieces, parts to the engine that can be changed. But when I love something, I'm loving the heartbeat of what it is. And the heartbeat is the authentic voice that lives in your soul, or my soul.
All right, so I have to ask, because I'm
Yeah.
curious kind of about your sales techniques, because you seem like the ultimate salesman. I mean, that's certainly been one of the key elements responsible
because you have to sell the stories to someone that wants to pay $100 million eventually.
And you do it as good or better than anybody. But you do something that's kind of funny too. Tell about the photos you'll creatively place in people's homes.
So that's a different thought. Okay, so basically, I've done a few things that are kind of distinctive to me, and some of them are traits that you're referring to, and others are just physical. I mean, I changed my hairdo when nobody had spiked hair. I just, because my daughter saw me spike my hair up in a swimming pool, she said, "Dad, I love it." It was like 3, and that became very high spiked hair that I've had for like 25 years. The other thing I've had for about 20 years or longer as well is when I go to somebody's house, no matter whom, for the first time, I bring a picture of myself in a little heart, a little rhinestone heart that I buy at the CVS. And it started at $1.69, and now they're, I think, up to $1.99, the price of these little heart shapes. And it's a picture of me kind of going like that, just jokey, kind of kitschy. And I hide them in very prominent and coveted places in people's homes. Like the first one I did was to Marvin Davis, who was a big oil wildcatter that had enough money to buy 20th Century Fox, and I got invited to a party, and I put one amongst all of his family and esteemed friends and government dignitaries of all over the world. And I remember right next to Ronald Reagan was my picture. and I left the party, and I get a phone call the next morning from Marvin Davis's assistant saying, "How dare you do that? Mr. Davis is offended beyond belief." And it was like, just a picture, like I thought it was funny. And but I didn't say that to her because I was scared. And then he insisted on calling me himself after she assaulted me. And he said, you're nothing in this town. You're nobody. He gave me one of those, you're dead in Hollywood, one of those stories. And I thought, wow, if he's willing to be that shaken up over a picture, I'm going to do it to everybody. And I got better reactions. I mostly I say it on TV, or whatever. I've done 3 to Rupert Murdoch in 3 of his homes, and he never got mad. I think he got a kick out of it. I know he did, and I've done it. Slipped one into George Clooney's books, in a book stand, and it took him quite a while to see it. I put one into one of Owen Wilson's on a shelf. It took a year. I put one in Fidel Castro's military palace when I was there for a 6-hour lunch. And in the military palace, my friend says, "What are you doing? We'll never get out of this country." But it's just a thing that I really have to do. Bill Gates, he wasn't mad about it, but he I don't know if he thought it was funny, but I did that.
So you have these curiosity conversations. You've had anywhere from 1 a day to a few dozen a year, depending on, I guess, the time of your life.
Well, in my life now, the last 25 years, I do them without fail every 2 weeks. A discipline of doing them every 2 weeks.
And the thinking behind them is what?
The thinking behind them is it tests your ability to communicate. Because it's Nobel laureates, John Nash, who I met and made a movie called A Beautiful Mind that he became the subject of. You have to understand the engine of what they do for a living. So I have to study about the engine, whether it's biochemistry or physics or whatever it is. I have to understand that well enough that I can ask interesting enough questions to them in a language that I don't know at all, that I'm just kind of struggling with. But I have to prove that I've studied, and I have to ask good enough questions that it's a good date. They're designed to be the best date they've ever had.
Well, so I want to ask you about some of them and get your reaction, what comes to mind from that experience.
Okay.
The first one that kind of plays off what you just said, Isaac Asimov.
That was terrible. Isaac Asimov is the most preeminent writer of science fiction ever, probably. I flew to New York, coach seat, of course, and met with and he brought his wife. His wife was also his psychiatrist. And I met with them, and they ordered club sodas with cranberry juice. And she said, after about 2 minutes, "Isaac, he doesn't know enough about your work. We're leaving." And that was it. 2 minutes. They left. And that was tough. I mean, they didn't have to do that, but I probably didn't know his work as well.
And it resonated with you, though, right?
It did.
That experience.
Yeah. Be better prepared. And I don't think I could have ever satisfied them, but what else?
Michael Jackson.
Oh, Michael Jackson was amazing. There was a reason that all of a sudden he wanted to meet me. I owned a book that was interesting to him, and he wanted to meet, and I was just blown away. And he came I walked him from our lobby to my office, but he had that glove on, and the high voice, and I thought, wow. I don't think I can talk to him seriously with that glove on. I said, "Do you mind if you take your glove off?" And he looked at me like, "Excuse me, no one's ever asked me that question." And I said, yeah, would you mind taking the glove off? And he eventually said yes. I just had to ask him nicely a few times. And when he took his glove off, his voice changed. It wasn't that high voice. He had like a real voice. And he became almost like the most brilliant music professor one could ever experience. You know, it was really like Amadeus or something. He spoke about how you create music, how you your fundamentals of choreography, how they integrate, everything. And it was just this profound hour I had with him.
Elon Musk and the rocket launch.
Oh, Elon Musk and the rocket. I got to know Elon. He was very generous in meeting me long before he had the, you know, before SpaceX. And then when he started building SpaceX, I wanted to come see a launch. He invited me to see a launch. So I did. And SpaceX is almost like where they built, it's almost the manufacture of the rocket is there. So thousands of workers that put bolts on and build the rockets. And it's almost like mission control at the same time, because there's a room, a booth, which he sits in and is commander of that booth. And everyone's in this glass booth, and the glass has got to be, you know, 15, 20 feet high in this giant warehouse and it was so moving. So we got it like T-9 and they had to cancel. And all of the engineers and everybody had if there was room, they had their nose up against the glass. And I was in an area and everyone it was so exciting. It was so palpable, the feeling, because these people work on making the rocket and they get to see the launch and it's all integrated. It was seamless and it was spectacular. And they said, that was a Tuesday, they said, you can come back Thursday if you'd like. So I came back Thursday and the launch actually went off. And I got to see the different stages of the launch and the cheering. I didn't even understand why people were cheering, but there was cheering, and I didn't understand the language that was being used during different stages of the development of the acceleration into space, and it was just so. And other people cried. I mean, it's just a really intense experience.
What about it touches you so much?
The enormity of the space program, and that's kind of what we tried to capture in the launch of Apollo 13. But it's magnified because these are the people that are making it right there. Their lives, their emotional lives, their intellectual lives are at stake while this is happening. So it's just touching. I get very moved by greatness, just human greatness. And greatness can be small things or big things or small things leading to big things, but just human greatness.
Speaking of greatness and somebody that's connected to Apollo 13, you were in London and found yourself across from Princess Diana.
Oh yes, I was. So Princess Diana, of course, Princess Diana was most famous and beloved woman in the world at this time. And I was trying to do a curiosity conversation with Princess Diana. And I was doing it like very conventionally, like sending letters to Buckingham Palace, and well, nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, coincidentally, we're invited to a royal premiere to premiere our movie Apollo 13. And at our royal premiere, it was going to be Charles and Diana. They both made it to the premiere, but Diana was the only one that went to the black tie after party dinner. And lo and behold, she's sitting directly in front of me. And on her sides are flanked as Tom Hanks on the left and Ron Howard on the right. And I'm right in front of her. And I'm thinking, I'm not gonna ask her all those kind of royal questions and be, the super uptight, polite thing you're supposed to be, because that will bore her to death. Let other people do that. I'm going to tell her Hollywood stories. I'm going to, I'm going to find a groove with Princess Di. And so I did find a groove. And I'm talking to her, and there's a couple times like Hanks goes, is he crazy? Like, what's he doing? But she was laughing, and it was fun. And I felt like now we've eaten the dinner, dessert arrives, and it's a pastry. And I was going through this ice cream jag where I just loved ice cream. And I thought, if they're gonna have ice cream, they have everything. The princess is here. And I asked a waiter for their ice cream, and she said, pardon me, what would you like? I said, I was just asking for maybe a bowl of ice cream. And so now she's asking, so they deliver a bowl of ice cream, a nice big bowl of ice cream, simply chocolate and vanilla. And I take some scoops and I say, would you like a scoop? And so she picks the spoon up and takes a small scoop. And to me, that became, I'm dating Princess Di. This is now a date, which is fictional, of course, but it was just like, that was it. And that was the beginning of, I got her Apollo 13 sweatshirts for her and she and the boys, and that was that.
Did you hear from her after that?
No.
Okay.
But I did it.
Jay-Z and American Gangster.
The Jay-Z and American Gangster story is a really gratifying story. So basically, I knew Jay-Z long before American Gangster. And all of a sudden, now I'm making this movie called American Gangster, and I've finished it. And I get a call from Jay that says, I would like to do the soundtrack for American Gangster. And I say, listen, I would love that, Jay. I mean, nothing would make me more proud and more excited to do that, but we already have the soundtrack album. And he says, well, I'll do a second soundtrack album. It'll be a companion that's inspired by, because I'm very inspired by the life of Frank Lucas. I see some parallels in my life. And I said, sure, if you think you can do it, but it has to be done in 14 days. And he did it. He performed in it, he wrote it. See, another thing that'll make me emotional. He did everything. He executed a perfect album that became much more important and more popular than the soundtrack album. And I went and saw him one day in the 13 days that he did it. And I've just marveled at it because, he's kind of a king in his universe. And I just didn't know he could grind it out like that and make it amazing and do everything with that kind of time pressure. But he was inspired and passionate, had commitment, and he did it. So it was, I really marveled at his superpowers.
What about that, though, makes you emotional?
When people achieve greatness, when conditions are like that, when conditions are, they don't have to. It's impossible. Nobody's done that before. And somebody that doesn't have to do it reaches inside of themselves the same way those astronauts up in space found a way to find something in them to survive in Apollo 13. That's what he did. And I just deeply admire it.
Two other people you've had curiosity conversations with, Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, I was just really lucky to have him say yes. And I was very intimidated by him, very, 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 because you can feel the energy of genius. Comes out of his pores. And with the energy of genius, there's an intolerance. Not an impoliteness, but an intolerance that when you say something stupid or you talk too long, I'm just gonna have to pivot, So that was challenging. And with Jeff Bezos, he came to my office and he was just really kind and humble and had that great laugh then as he does now. And I could have never imagined he'd be the richest man in the world. I mean, I knew he'd be successful, and that's why I sort of reached out, because he was succeeding at something impossible already. And but he was really easy, and you would see glimpses of genius, like his understanding of physics and space and the cosmos. He understood things with a high level of depth behind it, but didn't feel the need to show off ever. He's not a show off.
I want to take you back to when you were a young man, when you were in college. I believe you're working something like 40 hours a week in addition to being a student.
Yeah.
And you, with the money you make, you buy a Porsche. Why tell people that your parents actually bought it for you?
Well, because I went to USC at the time that almost every kid was really rich. That, you know, there were dynastic families, the IBM family, the Watson family. I mean, they, you know, were predominantly in my environment as a freshman. And I just felt like, wow, I am a real outsider here. I didn't realize I'd be such an outsider. And I thought, you know, it was socioeconomic conditions that made me an outsider, you know, that everybody was, and so therefore I thought I better change this somehow. So basically I thought I need a symbol. And so the symbol would be a Porsche, a 911T Targa. And so what I did is, without telling anybody, I worked at the Howard Johnsons, and I worked 40 hours a week, and I pretty quickly raised enough money to get a down payment to buy a Porsche. So I bought this 911T Targa, and then when people said, what am I doing for Christmas vacation, I'd say, oh, I'm going to be skiing in Stad, and I'd sort of fictionalize what that was all about, and I created like fictional summers in St. Bart's and, you know, Anguilla and stuff like that. And that, I don't know if I guess presumably people believed it, I don't know.
Why was it important to you to do that?
I just felt too much of an inferior outsider. You know, I felt, you know, although I did get lucky, one semester to catch up, I took 26 units. And Lynn Swann, who was the #1 athlete at USC, wide receiver, you know, and was most valuable player of the Super Bowl twice. Anyway, bottom line, Lynn Swann said, Grazer, you took 26 units. Because we were kind of friends, well, kinda. And he goes, so everybody started calling me 26. So I immediately had a nickname at USC. So having a little bit of this identity plus a nickname, hey, 26, come on over here. You know, like it was always 26, that was my name. And that was kind of helpful too.
Your parents, when you were growing up,
Yeah.
I believe reasonably tough upbringing. How much would they fight when you were growing up?
Well, yeah, they fought with each other a lot. They weren't mean to me. They weren't mean to my brother and sister. There was no reason for them to be married. They shouldn't have married each other. And they weren't really, they were good people, but ill-equipped to be parents, basically. They just weren't, you know, it was just hard because they were so incompatible. And so they'd fight, raging fights every night. So I
About
felt,
what?
He'd come home, he was a criminal lawyer. And criminal lawyers, they live the life of criminals. They live in the ethos, they live in the morality, they live in the language of criminals. And I even made a point when I became successful, let's get off that, to meet the most famous criminal lawyers in the world. And they just they rationalize truth. That's how they win. So my dad, you know, would stay out very late to 2 a.m, probably with other women. And it just, they fought about everything. And so it was just terrorizing. I'm getting divorced. My mom might say, your dad and I are getting divorced. I think be prepared for him to move out, you know, just.
And then it wouldn't happen. It eventually happened.
It wouldn't happen the right way with a clean break. Nothing didn't work, you know. So I really admired what I thought were normal families. So
How do you think they terrorized you? Because
I'd hear it, because my bedroom was 10 feet away from where they'd fight all night. And so you're just hearing it. You know, you're hearing bad words, you're hearing loud, horribly loud voices, you're hearing yelling, you're hearing no hitting, just yelling and screaming. It was just terrorizing.
What was the interaction like between you and your dad?
No connection at all. I mean, he wasn't he wasn't of the generation, and wasn't the kind of dad that ever said, "I love you." So, that just creates a different thing.
When you reflect back on that as older now and a parent of yourself, how do you think that impacted you?
I'm still trying to figure it out. But on the most superficial, on the first layers of how it impacted me, is it caused me to define all the traits that my father had that I didn't like and don't do them. And I did that pretty early in life, pre-20. I exercise religiously, I don't stop exercising, I care a lot about medical and physical health, or I was going to say mental and physical health.
Yeah.
And that's probably why I do curiosity conversations, because it ignites a lot of a lot of cognitive tools that should be in place and activated all the time. So it helps me solve creative puzzles. It helps me solve human communication puzzles. I do all the things that he never did. He didn't do any of those things. I don't drink excessively, eat excessively. I do everything in moderation, but I do it.
What about you and your mom?
She was a really good person, but unfortunately, because the marriage was bad, she wasn't confident enough.
And then her mom, your grandma.
Her mom was, meaning my grandmother, was kind of everything to me. She was stable and empowering, super empowering. Like, she'd see, because I'm acutely dyslexic, she'd see these straight F's on my report card, and she goes, "You're going all the way, think big, be big," She was really serious. She was positive I was going to be successful. Positive. And I would say, there's really no empirical evidence that proves that to be true. And she just would override all logic, or, the logic of optics. And so she just was a believer.
And the difference you think that made in your life was what?
Substantial. I believe you just need one person that's consistent, that consistently can be around and believe in you, and find features in you that have value. She'd go, "You have a gift of gab, you'll go all the way." A gift of gab meant I could talk anyone into anything. I could, which I kind of could, actually.
How about football tryouts?
So I did a lot of sports, and I was a pretty tough kid, like really tough, like the toughest kid in my elementary and junior high school. I could beat anybody up.
If you saw a bully, you wouldn't have any of that.
Yeah, I often would beat up bullies. It wasn't like a Robin Hood complex. I just didn't like bullies. So, and then it got to be a point where, playing football and all this stuff, my friends became between 6'2" and 6'5" in high school. And I was 5'4" in freshman. And then junior, I was like 5'8". But nonetheless, so I went out for high school football. And Coach Ogawa decided after Hell Week, which I barely made it through Hell Week, but I did, that 300 kids were gonna all be in this big auditorium. And the job was, say your name and your status. Perry Shellmeyer, tailback. Richard Cox, my best friend, quarterback. Brian Grazer, tailback. Incorrect. And I go, I think, incorrect. He says, cut. So he cut me in front of the whole, of all divisions of the football team. So that was embarrassing.
Devastating?
Devastating. Absolutely horrible. And so I immediately went out I just didn't know what to do. It was devastating, Coach Ogawa, to this day. And so I decided I'd go out for swimming, because that was the only thing left, and I could get out of a class. I didn't really swim much. Anyway, bottom line is, we have a city meet, which is a pre-city, where the city of Los Angeles was 65 schools. And the guy goes, Coach Wiley goes, Grazer, lane 8, 100 butterfly. And I broke the city record that moment.
And the enthusiasm from that stuck with you for a long time.
Yeah, that was good.
You mentioned the grades were a struggle when you were growing up, but you had a resourceful eye that helped in improving the grades in high school, right?
Well, I would challenge every grade. And challenging every grade was improving my grade through conversation. So I'd say, my C should be a B, and I would like to justify it. Will you take the test? Yes, can I do it verbally? Oh, why don't we just do it right now? And I would just I was good because I kind of get the inner game of things.
Yeah, but you also were, pick the right people to sit next to, right?
Oh, you mean to cheat on them?
Yeah, right.
I might have said that jokingly. I didn't really do that. I mean, I did a version of that once, like the way Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd did it in a movie that I produced called Spies Like Us.
Got it.
Where it's really obvious, I did do that, but that wasn't very. Maybe if I were better at it. I just didn't find that to be a solution.
So when you improved your grades, it was through...
by challenging them. I would challenge them.
The teachers?
Yeah.
How old were you when you could read and write?
Well, I struggled. Probably the 5th grade, I could begin to read and spell. And then I got better as time went. And then in college, I became rather good at taking tests, because I developed a system for myself, constant resynthesizing what I'd learned. So I'd have a mass of information, and then I'd synthesize it down to something that I could understand, again, the mechanics of what was the application of things. So once I could understand the application of something, then I could remember the essential ingredients that it would take what the test would be. So I would have all that underlined in yellow. I would expose myself to that right before I went to bed the night of, and have that enter my subconscious. And I found that very, very, very effective.
What specifically would you struggle with reading, especially early on? Like in terms of the process, when you're actually seeing the words?
I immediately go from right to left instead of left to right. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, first I just could not pronounce a word. I still find it kind of hard. I mean, if I look at a word, I'd have to, sound it out phonetically, this, that. It was just impossible, literally impossible.
And how did you teach yourself how to do it?
Well, Mr. Polivoy was my teacher. That didn't work, but he tried, really tried. It just kind of happened, like an epiphany almost. I had this moment where things started to have clarity or line up, where words weren't spinning around. So that happened. They never, to be accurate, they don't spin around, but they just I can't compute them.
And the issues the dyslexia created for you was what?
Resourcefulness. I mean, it teaches you have to get good grades, and there's certain things you have to, if you create goals for yourself, those things have to be achieved, and I'm very goal-oriented. So I wanted to achieve those goals, but I was unable to do it conventionally through reading. So I found other ways. And so being resourceful can be applied to anything and everything. And that's what these, tech entrepreneurs largely do.
Your oldest son, Riley, correct me if I'm wrong, lives in an assisted living facility. I think works at Whole Foods. How did your dyslexia growing up, you think, prepared you for figuring out how to handle that?
I just thought this boy was going to have the greatest life in the world. He was so beautiful. And just a second.
Sure.
And so, you know, I think I was a very good dad. His mom's a very good mom. And so we wanted to get him in groups of people. And so I remember with other kids, and I just remember at a soccer game at Pepperdine, he was running in the wrong direction all the time. I mean, literally running in the wrong direction. Just everything was out of coordination alignment. If you threw him a ball, instead of two hands, he'd try to hit one hand. It would just, you know, just things were out of alignment. It was very, very difficult to diagnose. And we went to a lot of effort to try to find ways, you know, tasks to diagnose his disability. And I worked at it very hard. His mom, Corky, worked at it very hard. Anyway, eventually, you know, we found that it was, you know, pretty acute form of Asperger's. That was the classification of it. And so he's, you know, he has some skills and some not. But how it affected me was more, I became not a type A personality exactly, but not far from that. So I was already successful, and so therefore I was just like a force. I was like so much energy of a force going forward with my career, that this was like an interruption of the way I saw the world. So Riley's inconsistencies and disability, I didn't see the world that way. So I thought, wow, I have to help Riley. And I don't think it was deeply connected to my earlier disability of, you know, because his disability was so different, that it was so unrelated. But it was more like, I just better wake up and change the way I see the world. The world is full of unpredictable events. It's full of things that aren't right, you know. And so it just caused me to be the better part of me.
How cool was him running for student council president?
Okay, so that was amazing. So Riley was always in it was always in those special ed classes, but mainstreamed into Malibu High, which is a very big and cool high school, Malibu High. So I've now found he's been in Malibu High for 2 years, and almost all of his classes are these special ed classes that are only a couple kids in the class. I always felt it to be really important for him to be in a school with a larger population, because I just know being in larger populations and dealing with large is valuable, maybe the most valuable thing you can do. So I've now found the perfect school that's not Malibu High, because I could see he's never gonna make it, never. And I said, I found this school in Pasadena, and I thought he'd be thrilled. He goes, oh no, Dad, I'm not gonna go there. I go, why not? You wanted to go. No, but I've decided now I'm gonna run for student body president of the whole school. I said, oh, really? And I said, I think you're gonna really like this school. He goes, no, I'm running for office. I'm running for student body president. I go, how about treasurer? No. And so he ran for student body president against these really sharp kids. You know, one kid was a great kid. He's the son of one of my very good friends, Eric Roth, who won an Oscar for writing Forrest Gump. And this kid was a gifted kid too. And Riley ends up winning. He won student body president. And I was too freaked out to show up for it. So I sent my assistant there to film it. And I get this call, Riley won. It was just amazing.
How did it make you feel?
Well, it made me feel like he definitely made the right choice to run for office. But it gave me a lot of knowledge about parenting, that you want your kid to own something. And owning something, even if there's no prevailing logic that says like Riley's not going to be student body president, and it's just not possible. Like there's no, it doesn't add up, that he owned it, and he, whether he won or not, he was owning something that he really wanted to do. And when you own something as a kid or in life, it's probably the most meaningful thing you can do, like, is to work for something you can own.
How did Riley influence your decision to make A Beautiful Mind?
Well, he influenced it because I saw people, kids do mean tricks on Riley, and I thought, wow, it's tough enough for him to just cope with, deal with this disability. Now he's got to be stigmatized for it. And then I started, not only saw Riley that way, I started to see other people in the world, the Muzak of the world, where you don't really notice that guy banging his head into a garbage can or a telephone pole or a post. I start to see those people. They start to pop out at me, and I start to realize they're people too. And they're people like any versions of Riley, like they're more extreme than Riley, but they're all versions of one another. And I thought, it's hard enough just to deal with the disability. Why do we as human beings have to stigmatize them and make it harder and cause isolation for them, which is the worst thing?
What was the epiphany you had one day while watching The Shining?
Well, by watching The Shining, there's a sequence, very important sequence, where the protagonist is talking to imaginary people. And I thought that plus this woman named Veronica de Negre that survived torture by living in an alternate reality. So
who Sting introduced you to?
Yeah, that Sting introduced me to. So between seeing it physically, cinematically in The Shining, and hearing Veronica de Negre's story of survival, of being tortured unpredictably every day for, I think it was 18 months or 2 years, living in this other story means I think I should start A Beautiful Mind in a false reality, in an alternate reality that lives in the mind of a schizophrenic, which is multiple realities. So it was organic to that movie, and Ron was very good at it, and Akiva Goldman won an Oscar for writing it. I just simply had the slight inspiration, but he created it, Akiva, and yeah.
Why was it the most gratifying film you ever made?
Because it succeeded commercially in a very huge way. It succeeded critically in a huge way. We won Oscars. And it succeeded at helping people, wherever I went, people would go, oh my God, your movie helped my cousin. Nobody understood him. And, so it was enlightening that way.
When you won the Oscar for A Beautiful Mind, you said, it was as if every dream or fantasy that never happened in my life happened in that single moment.
Yeah.
Explain why.
It's just what happens. I didn't know the show was that emotional. I tell stories for a reason, because they interest me, and if they're good, they have an impact on the culture. And so this story had an impact on the culture. It succeeded at a dream, like having tremendous impact on the culture, and by helping the way we embrace and understand humanity. And so that's fundamentally my singular goal.
All right, so take me to an earlier Oscars when you mistook Braveheart winning for winning.
So, okay, on Apollo 13, all of a sudden, this movie that we didn't think was going to be commercially successful is enormously successful commercially. And then we think that story ends and we just victory, through the uprights. But then we get invited to go to the Oscars because we didn't realize, wow, we could even get nominated. And the movie got 9 Oscar nominations, the most important Oscar nominations. And everyone said, you're going to win the Oscar. It's Apollo 13, it's patriotic. It intersects with the anniversary of the space program, NASA, and all these things. And I'm positive I'm going to win now. And I've written my speech. It's in my tuxedo pocket on the left side. I'm certain I'm going to win. Every odds maker in the world has said Apollo 13 is going to win, and I'm sitting at the edge of my chair, along with the other 4, so total of 5 Oscar producers that produced the Oscar-nominated films, and I'm sure I'm going up. So I'm looking at Sidney Poitier right in front of me, the Oscar-winning actor himself, very deliberately, slowly, methodically, open the envelope to the Oscar. Who's going to win the Oscar? And he says, and the winner is, opens it up slowly. I'm like at the edge of my chair, and I see what looks like a bee rolling off his lip. And I'm thinking, I just thought it was me, saying Brian. And I got up to get the Oscar, and they say Braveheart. And this was literally so embarrassing, because I'm standing in the aisle when he says Braveheart. So I have to walk backwards to my seat, and there's Ron and Tom Hanks are next to me, and the further seat out is Jim Lovell, the actual astronaut. And he reached across them and grabbed my wrist and said, I never made it to the moon either. And that just put the whole thing in a bigger perspective. Again, wasn't very funny, but it was really truthful.
Didn't a studio exec too, like, give you the?
Oh yeah, the studio exec that actually, went like loser on my forehead when I looked back up, like that. Only 40 million people were seeing it.
So Tom Hanks once said about you, he really knows how to get talent, how to interest them, how to get them involved, and how to please them. What do you do?
Well, you try your very best, use all of your intuitive powers, because there's no scientific powers, to match the skill of the actor, which there might be 1,000 traits the actor has, or 100 traits, but only one is their superpower. So it's you find that exact superpower, and you say, that superpower is realized or actualized in the role that's written. And that, you try to match that. And that's hard. And then it's just making sure that the actor is always utilizing and operating with that superpower. So when it's off the narrative or the vertical line of that, you help the director and you help the actor to get on that very thin line, that vertical line to which is the story and the superpower.
But managing people and managing probably extraordinary
I'll
egos
do
in some
anything.
situations.
I mean, I will sublimate myself completely to get the best work out of.
Well, and that's what I heard too. Like just some of the extraordinary lengths you've had to go to, play into the actor's
let's say
needs.
Tom Cruise, who I love to work with. He has the greatest work ethic known to man. With him, I immediately had the intuition to shift the power I have to give to him. I said, basically, we need a role model, we need a team captain, knowing that theoretically that's supposed to be me. Would you be that? And he goes, absolutely, I'll do it. And then he does it. And his power is leading the charge. And there's no one better than him leading the charge.
Because he's Tom Cruise.
Because he has an outstanding work ethic, and he doesn't say grind people. He's just a role model that you want to live up to that work ethic. And so that seems not hard to do, but there's a lot of juggling and logistics you have to do to keep his superpower in alignment. Not his, I don't want to say it that way, but there's some actors, an Oscar-winning actor that I had to listen to him play music all night. I would have to, just a lot of intolerance.
How about the most difficult situation you ever encountered with an actor and how you worked your way through it?
Well, that might have been this Jim Carrey on the movie How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Because he's a genius. His genius was being completely suffocated in this epoxy suit he had to wear that took 5 hours, 6 hours sometimes to adhere to him, to be the Grinch. But he was determined to do it until he had to put on these contact lenses, these big frisbees on his eyeballs to make his eyes green, because he is a stickler for authenticity. And I said, we could do it digitally. No, I'll wear that thing. And then one day he said, I quit.
What do you mean he quits?
It was before we could start shooting, like 2 weeks out. He said, I have to quit. This is killing me. This is torturous. And I'll give all the money back, and I will give all the money back plus interest. I just can't do it. It's too torturous. And so I thought, would you give me the weekend and decide on Monday? And he said, I'd do that. And I knew a man that worked for the State Department that trains, you know, how soldiers can survive torture. And CIA, FBI, Navy SEALs. This guy is the #1 expert in the world at teaching survival techniques in situations of torture. Being buried alive for 2 weeks, how to survive. So this guy, Jim, is being tortured. I'm gonna call him. His name is Richard. I call Richard, I say, I'll pay you, come out here, spend the weekend with Jim Carrey. He did, and then Monday Jim Carrey says, I'm in, I'll do it. It was amazing.
Why will you sometimes go on set incognito?
I want to see how the crew is being treated. I want to watch, I want to see how the power dynamics are working. And there was a set, there's been a few sets where I was incognito, as you said, and I went to the caterer to try to get some food because I was entitled to get food, and they were really abusive. Like, get to the back of the line. I said, well, there is no line right now, you know, and they were really dicky about it. And then the first assistant was the one that caused them to be dicky. And so then this first assistant learned that that was actually me. I'm so sorry. Oh, yeah, I didn't know it was you. I go, that's the point. And so that wasn't good.
What'd you do as a result of that?
Let him go.
Explain why if somebody screws you over, you'll never address it with them.
I just don't think there's a point. You screwed me over. What are they going to do? They say sorry, or say sorry a lot of times, but they just revealed who they were, basically. Sometimes being screwed over is just part of the game and doesn't mean you can't get to the goal you've got. It just means that person that you thought was a friend or is an impediment. And then you just figure out how to get there knowing that that person's an impediment.
How true is it that you have enormous social anxiety?
Well, I like to be a good guest, so I do have a lot of social anxiety. It doesn't ever look like I have social anxiety, ever, to anybody.
But like, in what ways will you have it?
Just demands I put upon myself.
Like
demands to, well, the insecurity of fitting in, the demand of myself of when I do fit in, that I'm exceptional, that I don't grab the limelight, but when a subject that's coming, that I can field any subject at any time, which I think I can. Well, because I do so many of these curiosity conversations, and I research them, and they're not Zooms where you forget the location of what you're doing.
Right.
You know, you get to ground what you've learned in an experience, in a location, in moments, in pupil dilation, in facial recognition, in physiognomy, in all body language, you know, so it becomes emotional. And so I remember a lot.
Well, and you said you aren't outgoing, yet you put yourself in situations where you have to act that way all the time.
I am most comfortable when I'm uncomfortable. I feel like I'm getting the most done by disrupting my comfort zone. because I have to rise to the occasion of being, again, not a bragger, but one of the, the smartest kid in the room. I want people to understand that I understand.
That's important to you.
Yeah, it's important to me. That I get it.
And why?
Whatever the thing. Why?
Well, yeah, especially now. I mean, after like all the success you've
because
had. Because
people are, our culture is evolving and becoming smarter and smarter. And tech entrepreneurs are becoming smarter and smarter at certain things. And they're digging holes in the earth deeper and deeper and deeper. And I want to understand it. I want to be able to communicate with those people. I don't even need to get, I just want to get it. And I want them to understand that I get it.
So why did Ron Howard used to think you were on cocaine all the time?
Because I was really high strung. When I'm going, I talk very fast, and I talk with a lot of energy. I speak with a lot of energy, and so 30 years ago it was way less refined. And so we just thought, this dude's coked up, which I wasn't.
How superstitious are you?
Very. Any penny that is on the ground, I put in my left pocket. I've done that for 30 years. I don't care if I'm riding a bike, a motorcycle, whatever I'm doing, I stop, I turn around and get that penny. My version of superstition also interfaces with karma. I'm really karmic. So my outgoing nature is to be friendly, really friendly, like overly friendly to people, like, hey, how you doing? Or to interns, like, what are you working on? or like, hey, you look good, like always, because I feel they feel it, and I know I would feel it at the time that, that age. And I think it's just, I want the tip on the jump ball, in life. I want things to go well for me. I want to have good health. I want to, and I think karma factors into that.
You said before that you've been motivated by the fear of not having money. Explain that.
I'm not motivated by greed. I'm motivated more by fear. And fears, I have a lot of fears.
Of what?
Well, you said money. I don't want to have no money. But I mean, there's some people that are much wealthier than I am that still have that fear. They have that thing, that little seed. What else am I afraid of?
Complacency?
Definitely yes. Definitely it would be complacency, atrophy. Like, not physical atrophy, although I don't want that either, but just mental atrophy. That's why I create all these thought puzzles all the time. In fact, I even paint, the only one painting I would probably let you see is I painted a Schrodinger's cat, which is a thought experiment, of course. And I thought everything else is the stuff that you saw in my art studio. It's all girl bands, Barbies that never existed, and those other Barbies that are against the wanted ads, that kind of thing. But basically, those women. Yeah, mental atrophy. So I try to do things that engage thought, engage all sorts of, mentally cognitive puzzles.
Two people I'm going to be talking to coming up about you are Bob Iger and Ron Howard, so I wanted to ask you about them. First, on the Bob Iger front, how did the two of you meet in the first place?
Well, we met, I think we were both going through divorces around that time, and I was making a lot of movies in New York, and he was, a very big deal he was running ABC in New York. And then he came out to LA and ran ABC. So I probably met him in business first, and then, we just liked each other right off.
I think you guys grab coffee basically once a week.
Yeah, we definitely make a point to see each other once a week. I know it matters to me. I have, to maintain male friendships. That's success for me.
What about him do you think made you two hit it off?
Maybe I'm in his alter ego.
Oh, come on.
I think he's a very, very curious guy. He's used his curiosity to build Disney, like really, like what if I could actually get Pixar, even though Steve Jobs said no? Then he does it. He has a curiosity that really drives his life, and I have a curiosity that drives my life. So there's an access point there. Neither one of us want to be bored. When we're not interesting, we go, okay, see you tomorrow, or something like that. So we like the challenge of being able to interest one another.
Ron Howard.
Yes.
How well do you recall your first meeting with him and the fact that he really didn't want to be there?
I can remember it vividly. So basically, Ron Howard, I was meeting in person every single day, and I didn't get my quota of having that one person. I looked out my window and I see Richie Cunningham, Ron Howard. I yell out the window, Ron Howard, like that. And he just darted away from me. I mean, it makes sense. I scared him. And then I called his office, said to his assistant, Louisa, what went down? And she said, well, I'm sure I could get him to call you. And then he did, and then he came into my office, and I just remember it was like this golden aura around him. And I thought, wow, this guy is a special person. And the aura itself just brought goodness into the room. And I thought that was a really unique sensation that a human being could have, that he emanated that kind of aura. And then
and you said you decided almost immediately that you were going to bet on him.
Yeah, that I would bet on him. I immediately said, I have two stories that I'm going to make into movies, and they're down the road. One was called Night Shift, about a call girl ring run out of the New York City morgue, R-rated, of course. And the other was a PG-13 movie about a man falling in love with a girl that turned into being it happened to become a mermaid. And so he wanted to do the R-rated movie because he had a mustache now. He wanted to be a different guy. He didn't want to be, he of course, was always grateful that that he was one of the biggest stars in the world and was like an American icon. But he wanted to do different things. He wanted to have more edge. And so he didn't want to be doing a mermaid movie to start.
And speaking of the mustache, tell about the Andy Warhol painting that could have been.
Okay, I also knew Andy Warhol, and I had a great curiosity conversation with him and became friends. Like I could see him often in New York. And one time Andy said to me, it occurred to me that you have a partnership, I believe, with Ron Howard. He's an American icon. I would love to shave his mustache off and turn it into one of my silk screens. I'd like to do a before and after. One giant photograph that would be with the mustache that would become a silk screen, and then the after. I tell Ron, said, Andy wants to do this thing and he's going to give you the original. No, I don't want to do it. I go, it's Andy Warhol. No, I really like my mustache, and it's become part of me. I'm not shaving my mustache. I said, okay. So I tell Andy, he goes, oh, that's too bad. I go, what are you going to do now, Andy? What are you doing this week? I'm going to be doing a Love Boat. I'm acting a Love Boat. I thought, wow, this guy's so eclectic. And that was the story of that. Now, the postscript is that about, 4 or 5 years later, Ron and I were used to, when a movie that we made came out, we would go to the movie theater on Friday. So I had this movie called Cry Baby. It was either going to be a smash hit or a flop, Johnny Depp's very first movie. And I said, Ron, let's see it together. And he said, well, I have a flight out of here at midnight to go back to New York, but I could do it. We go to the movie theater, 600-seat house. There's 7 people in the whole theater. Total wipeout flop. And Ron goes, wow, what do we do? I said, I don't know. Let's go back to my house and get drunk or something. He goes, yeah, we could do a version of that. Go back to my house, drink a bottle of red wine. Then I say, let's start watching Drugstore Cowboy to make us more morose. And then we start watching that, which is a really good and effective movie. And then we drank another bottle of wine, and he went to the airport, and he got there early, and he went to the bathroom because he was there early and decided to shave and odd things. And he was kind of drunk, and he shaved his mustache off for free. So he never got those Warhols. And he thought it was funny, and I thought it was funny and ironic as well.
You said you guys work well together because you never tell one another what to do.
Yeah.
Explain that.
We don't use declarative sentences really on each other. We don't fight. We're very respectful, we talk about everything, and we're friends, but we're respectful and polite, which is kind of a Midwestern way, which is Ron. So I'm more rowdy, but I conform to that, and I respect it. I respect it, and I think it works, and that's what makes partnerships work. Respect. If there's a movie he wants to direct and I don't want him to, I think it'd be a big mistake. I just go, you can do whatever you want, Ron. You've earned it, but I don't know. And he goes, well, would you do it? No, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't recommend you doing it, but I could never say don't do it because you've earned through all of your hits to do what you want. Or if I don't like a movie score, he's had 2 movie scores I didn't like at all. I hated one of them. I thought it stopped the momentum of the film, destroyed it. And so normally I'd just go, he'd say, what do you think of the score? I love it. And I go, I don't know. And he knows that means I don't like it. But I don't ever go that's terrible, man. I hate that. And we just don't talk like that.
Longest relationship you've ever had?
Ever. It's a lot longer than anything. It's been almost 40 years. It's the longest partnership in all of Hollywood's history.
How do you view marriage?
Well, I'm so happy in marriage. I love it. I have respect for it, and I'm hopeful, and I was disappointed when the ones that didn't work. But I got great kids, and those 4 great kids are, very unified in our family, I'm their father, Veronica's a stepmother. They love her. They talk to her often before they call me, hey, will you help me with this? And because she's very left-brained, she can solve any problem at any time, literally anything.
What do you think you've learned about yourself through your marriages?
They were trial marriages. There were trials.
Brian.
And because life is trial and error, it's so I got these 4 good kids and all that, and life's an experiment.
How do you think you do at marriage?
I think I believe in it, and I think I do well at it. It's really knowing yourself and really knowing the other person and being truthful about those things. And so, you have to be in exact alignment on those, on what you are, what they are, and then chemistry defines, how that feels. And then, it's that.
I read somewhere you said after your last divorce, you told yourself you were never going to get married again.
Yeah, that was at least 10 years ago, yeah.
When did you have the realization that oh my gosh, this is it?
Well,
in terms of you're gonna get married again.
Yeah. Right here, with 350 people right on this area here. So basically, I just think my wife has so much goodness in her. I'm very, very attracted to goodness. I'm very aligned with goodness. I think I'm a good guy. You know, I think I have a good heart, and I think I do good things. And I think Ron is like an exceptionally good person. And I think my wife is an exceptionally good person. It's their nature. My goodness is, I think I have a good heart, but I do things that are, I'm conscientious of goodness. I think they are just good.
What's the distinction?
Some people are very, like my wife is very charitable, very generous with her time, helping in multiple organizations, very conscientiously, you know, very uniquely kind to the kids, and not babies them, because that's not going to work, but you know, there's those kinds of people that are just more giving than taking. I take more than they do, meaning Ron and Veronica. I would probably be, I'm not a taker, but I take more than they do.
So I want to completely shift gears here and talk to you about the sports movies that you've been involved with over the years. I think I told you a little while before he passed away, we spent 2 days with Niki Lauda in Austria and Belgium.
Oh yeah, you did tell me that. Yeah.
Taping an episode. So how about Rush? Like, just what comes to mind for you from that experience?
In the making of a movie and in the cutting and post-production of a movie, it can have a remarkable change. And so Ron, you know, who directed the movie, his rough cut, like I thought, oh boy, and then he just kept working on it, that movies can completely transform from what they were, you know, when they're finished as a rough cut to a final cut with music and mix and sound. That movie really benefited from sound effects and music and style, and it had a lot of things that are optically and sonically exciting and enriching and stimulating. And those things all came into play at the final cut of that movie. I also like, you know, I like the characters so much. I like that Niki Lauda was just so determined, but wasn't really very sexy. Whereas, you know, the other character played by Chris Hemsworth, James Hunt, was really sexy and seemed like everything was so easy. Getting girls was so easy. Winning was so easy. And in life, you know, the more solid values, you know, the Niki Lauda character is more powerful, more solid, and probably the right way to go.
Cinderella Man, and I think you guys actually screened that at the White House too.
We did. We screened Cinderella Man at the White House for George W. Bush, and I went that day, because anytime I do anything, I pack in stuff. I met with Barack Obama, who was a senator, and then in the office, the 99th office of the Senate, which you have to take a monorail to. It is like going to the Department of the Motor Vehicles. I met this senator that delivered one of the greatest speeches of all time. And he's just sitting there with his arms out like this, real relaxed the way you see him with his arms spread out. And I just thought, wow, this dude is so cool. And he's fine with being in that office number 99, and he was just as comfortable being president, you know, so that was awesome. And then I went from that office to the number 2 office, John McCain, which I think was Thomas Jefferson's. And he could just walk right out the door and be on the Senate floor, whereas Barack, of course, had to get on the monorail and do from room to train, a lot of transfers. And I just was very delighted and privileged to be able to do all that stuff. And we did actually screen Cinderella Man, and I've met a lot of presidents, you know, in my, you know, life, and I found that George W. Bush was really the most comfortable in his own skin. There was no president more comfortable in his own skin and more satisfied with his present job. being president. A lot of other presidents are also want other stuff. They're lobbying other things. There's something behind it. You know what I mean? There's ambitions and ideas that are, not bad, that are behind that job. George W. Bush, he was so present, and he's just a guy that's just thrilled to be thrilled to be the president of the United States. He didn't need an entourage. He didn't have an entourage. He didn't sit with an entourage. He picked up his own tray, put the food on the tray, no frills. I thought it was beautiful.
Friday Night Lights?
Well, Friday Night Lights, I love that movie so much. Pete Berg directed it. It took me 9 years to get that movie made correctly. I had other directors that I just changed they just weren't right for me. But Pete Berg was just so honest about how he approached, Odessa, Texas, and football and small town living. So Billy Bob Thornton blew me away. I mean, that's his speeches, his style, his power, his charisma was beautiful.
The Pele doc?
The Pele doc never turned out to be as good as I wanted it to be or dreamed it could be. And I didn't know that much about soccer, but I didn't even see him as a soccer player. You look at Pele's top 10 shots, they're beyond soccer. They're some extraterrestrial force that's coming into play. Like, they're magical. And so I thought we were going to be able to capture that magic. And we did a little bit, but I loved the journey, and I got to know Pele, and I flew to, the Cannes Film Festival with him, or he actually flew my daughter there. I said, my daughter's in New York, would you mind? And he said, no, we'll pick her up. It was like that thing. That was kind of cool.
How about the day sports stood still?
It was Chris Paul's idea, because he had it happen to him the day NBA stopped.
Yeah.
And he called me that night. I got this idea. It's the day that sports ended. And he said a few more sentences. I said, I'll get this thing done right away. And that minute, I put Justin Wilkes on the phone, who runs our documentaries, and it just happened like that. Justin is an amazing artist and storyteller and documentarian, and Chris is a force. When Chris gets behind something, it happens, and it happens correctly.
So changing Hollywood business models and all of that, I mean, obviously it seems like every decade or so, everything shifts, so this is nothing new. But I wanted to ask you about the late 90s, early 2000s, these rich production deals that some of the best producers were getting. Explain how you saw that start to shift in present day and why.
The 80s and the 90s had some similarities. They still maintained the romance of Hollywood, where there's a studio boss, and the tippy-top studio boss is usually a role model kind of person, where there's certain things that studio boss wants. Like Warner Brothers always wanted stars, because their predecessor, Jack Warner, liked stars, Steve Ross liked stars, Bob Daly and Terry Semel liked stars. So when the bosses like the stars, the storytellers that are doing tour de force movies that could potentially be a star, Warner's chases it and we chase them.
Yep.
So there's points of intersection. So Paramount, was kind of always a high concept company, to me, in the 80s and 90s. So they all had personalities, and the personalities were sort of, were built out of origin stories beginning, in the 30s and 40s, and then went further on into time. And when I say romance of Hollywood means that stories were inspired, they were inspired by something personal. All stories were like personal. That studio chairman, whether they're stars or high concepts or whatever they are, they're built out of pride, something that it's a personal statement. And I think now it's less personal and just straight money. So the motivating factor today with streamers is we need to get content into our pipe and as much content as possible quickly. And so therefore the motivation, they're sending out this signal that, hey, if you can do that, we're interested. And if you can do hits and do that and scalable, we're really interested. And meaning we will make a gigantic production deal with you. And in the early days, 80s, 90s, and even 2000, it was more like, are you passionate for this? They bought passion.
Yeah.
And now I don't think that is the commodity that's saleable. It's not saleable, but it's more data and logic.
The biggest challenge on your end from going from a first look deal with Universal, which you had forever, to now Imagine being an independent, standalone company?
I like it. Well, because we basically, we try to, work within, a value system. I mean, we like our movies to work within a qualitative value system that we've done for, 25, 30 years, and we fail at stuff, but it's not within the intentionality of the piece. The intentionality of the movies or television shows is to try to do something that's original, that hasn't been done, and to do something that has redemption. So
The challenge, the biggest challenge though you've encountered in doing that would be what? I mean, going from the Universal long-time deal to being a standalone company?
Well, the challenge was to get financed, and then we did that. I got financed. Well, I made a deal with a banking company that I respect called Rain.
How does the satisfaction on your end compare from being at Julio, your really talented young producer, and I were talking a little bit about this, about how you've gone from being a boots on the ground producer to a little more of 30,000 foot view running standalone company. How does the satisfaction for you from one to the other compare?
I never did the boots on the ground that I think you're referring to. Where like Julie's boots on the ground, she is on the set of the Lin-Manuel Miranda movie, Tick, Tick, Boom.
Yeah.
I only did that. I only did that twice. No, 3 times in my whole life, and I produced like 80 or 90 movies. I don't like to go to sets every day. I don't feel I'm valuable at a set every day. I don't think I'm impactful on a set every day. Now, some other people, it's sort of to each his own or her own. I felt like I have more impact having objectivity and not getting sucked into the drama or psychodrama of this new community called a movie. Because then pretty quickly you're taken for granted. And I think it's better to be away and then give thoughtful notes based on dailies, you have to know the people. Like, I absolutely make sure I know the department heads. I make sure that I know the actors, the stars. I make sure I, am in service of the stars still. But the boots on the ground thing I never did and never thought was important to the way I do things. I like to build stories. My curiosity conversations, quite frankly, are much more valuable to a movie than me going with my boots on the ground.
Imagine Impact Systems.
Yes.
How did the idea come about?
It's called Impact. It's definitely its own standalone company. It's a startup that's on a path to success already. 3 years ago, I saw that streamers were going to dominate the distribution and the making of movies and television, all content. They're all going to be, they'll all be streaming systems. And streaming systems will be very, very competitive with one another, even more competitive than the analog studios. And what they're going to want is the crown jewel is storytellers. Stars can only work if there's a great story and a well-written story. So the most important thing is original voices. So we wanted to break down the basic sort of the medieval Hollywood system, that caste system, and say, we're going to open this boot camp, to the entire world, democratize access to Hollywood to the entire world, and say, if you have an original voice, apply to Impact. And many hundreds of thousands, maybe we're approaching millions of people apply to Impact. So Impact is this global funnel into this company called Impact, which then has a population of 30,000 writers now after about a year and a half that can work on projects without having to be at the bottom of the rung of a ladder at a studio. And if you get into the boot camp, which will create a boot camp like Y Combinator, which is a startup accelerator in the Valley, then you get hundreds of people in the boot camp. They have to apply. They get through the admissions program, and they have 8 weeks to actually write and complete a script. That's their contract. They have to complete the script, otherwise they can't be in boot camp. We've had tremendous success. Our first one was a kid from Zimbabwe named Godfrey, who had $12 in his whole life. He had a 4-way bidding war to buy his animated movie. Netflix got it. He got $400,000 and now millions because they're making this movie.
Long-term goals with it's what? I mean, you've done a lot with it already in the year and a half.
Long-term goals are to create a unified system that creates transparency for the marketplace of our workforce in Hollywood. There's $180 billion spent on the workforce, meaning caterers, electricians, transportation, everything. And it's so disaggregated. You know, we have people working in Atlanta right now on my Genius series on Aretha Franklin. They don't know where their next jobs are because there's no centralized system that says, oh, there's jobs in Alaska. Oh, wait, there's right to work state in Detroit. Oh, there's this. That's not an effective system. It's not effective for the workforce that needs the jobs. It's not good for their families. So it's designed to unify all these jobs and make it transparent and give them the ability to interact on trying to get their next job.